Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 5844 Southwest Boundary Street here in Portland, located just to the left of the front doorway. That's as you face the house from the street. That's how I describe everything. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is a-running. We're going to zero out here at the base of the cleanout. And the cleanout's deceiving. It's not actually ABS, it's actually a cast iron clean out. In reality, someone probably lopped the old clean out off and just tied on a plastic top to it so it's easier to open. So anyhow, off we go here. Let's hope for maybe there's some updates going on somewhere further down line. But right out of the gate, the cast iron there looks very healthy. Cast iron from this era, typically speaking, holds up for quite a long time. Start getting into the 70s era cast iron, not so much. That stuff wears out really quick. You might have a lucky sewer line here. Normally your cast iron only gets out about 5 feet outside the house, and then this era typically would have swapped over to concrete, maybe clay, but more concrete pipe of this era. The fact that we're still in cast iron at 36 feet tells me we're probably going to remain cast iron up to at least the right-of-way, if not the street edge. Sometimes you get it all the way to the main. Ooh, look at that. Beautiful. Swapping over there to 3034 PVC. Fabulous looking sewer line so far. Just a downhill run the entire way. And the people living here have treated this thing nicely. It is a spiffy clean sewer line. That is exactly how you want things to look. So once we get out to this point here, we're transitioning now into 6-inch concrete. We do have root penetration, although it's not doing anything to affect functionality as it sits. Those roots would have to grow quite a bit larger to get to that point. There are roots there nonetheless. So I'm going to at least mark those. Honestly, the more concerning thing about the roots is what they can do to the pipe joints, and especially so when people hastily start cutting roots. I've noticed over the 13 years I've been doing this, the people that try to buy time, especially on older pipe materials like concrete and clay, they'll get in there and start hacking the roots out even if they're not causing problems, just so it visually looks nicer. The problem when you do that is those roots there are often clogging up the pipe joint to an extent. And when you go and hack them out of there, you open the joint up even more, and it can allow a lot more, if there was any at one point, dirt to start flowing through the pipe, groundwater and dirt, and it can lead to hydro erosion, and sometimes quite rapidly. So anyway, I'm going to mark this out. In this part of town, I'll have to check what county we're in. If we're in Washington County, the line, generally speaking, unless something's changed recently, is 100% yours up to the main. If we're in Multnomah County, everything from the street edge on out falls into city territory. So if this one does fall into homeowners, I am going to recommend a repair here. Not so much because of the roots. This is to take advantage of an epoxy liner, a trenchless repair system, while the line still has good slope and grade. My concern is that joint there where the roots are punching through is separated. I can see a dark moisture ring around it. The concern is if that sits for too long, you could potentially end up with hydro erosion, which can cause the line to settle, where you can develop an offset joint or a belly or something of that nature. Right now, the line has great slope through there. You'd have a very nice result out of it. So if for some reason the line is not repaired now, as right now, you're kind of doing this, at least in my opinion, to bolster things up for longevity purposes, and also to save a lot of money on repairing something that's going to need repairs at some point down the road. If you choose not to do a fix on it right now, honestly, I would probably just leave the roots as they are. They're of no concern as they sit currently. And I would rescope yearly up until you're ready to do a repair. If you start to see the roots growing aggressively, you start to see the joint shifting to where you're going to get an offset or a belly or something of that nature, that's where you want to jump on it and shoot that liner through. My presumption here is that is likely deep under the roadway. So we're going to go locate this really quick here. We'll get it marked out with green paint. All right, located the camera head successfully. Line terminates out on Southwest Boundary. It's kind of a tricky spot to locate, I think, because of the angle of the pipe and the depth we're dealing with here. But I'm following the old saw cut and trench that was cut in when the rest of the line was updated. Between that and the locates I'm getting, it looks like the remainder of this line is out beyond the road edge into the street. The main doesn't push very far into the road, so it's one I had to sit there and haggle with for a second. In fact, I'm going to go back down here and locate where the line is in a flatter orientation so I can get a better locate. There on that nosedive like that, it's a very tricky spot to get a proper locate. There we go. Got a much better locate that time around. We are situated right now a good 2 feet past the street edge. That's where we want to be. And that is the mark of a proper installer that understands Multnomah County. The last thing you want to do is take that update right smack dab to the end of the homeowner responsibility, right on the dividing line. Those transition joints, when you've got a diameter change, 4 to 6 inch pipe, even more so when you have new and old pipe meeting up with each other, is the ultimate combination and setup for roots to get in. Transition joints are by far the weakest joints in your line to roots. And especially with this kind of setup here. You've already got roots there too. So it's one of those spots that I would not be surprised if it were to happen at some point. The beauty is whoever did this understands how Multnomah County operates, and they took the update past the street edge. That way if a root intrusion ever does come plowing through there at that joint, it's doing so in city responsibility. That's very nice to see that. A little bit of a bulging gasket there, or Fernco. That's all it is. It's visually a little blemish, but it's not doing anything to affect functionality. Joint all appears sealed up there, and the amount of gasket sticking through is so minor, it's not affecting functionality, especially on a slope like this. And cast iron, like I was saying before, it holds up a long time, but like anything, it wears out. It would behoove you, especially if this is a house you're going to be in for a while, to rescope the line every so often. Now, do you see how this is kind of an example, although this might actually be just a little bit of rust skill than anything. Cast iron over time will eventually, if it's in the ground long enough, usually what wears out is the flow line. You'll eventually get a trough or a channel that gets cut into the metal in the flow line. If you ever heard the term rotting out cast iron, that's what eventually happens to cast iron if it sits for long enough. Or in the ground long enough. So it's a good idea to rescope periodically. If you start seeing any signs of that, and I would predict this is going to be down the road a ways. This is not tomorrow. I don't want you losing sleep over it. But if this is going to be a forever home, I'd rescope the line every few years to keep an eye on things. If you start seeing any pipe joints wearing out, any significant channeling occurring, once again, going back to the liner system, this is pipe that you can update trenchlessly without digging nowadays. So, and it's you don't want to wait for a line to completely wear out to Swiss cheese before doing it, because that often brings on settling problems where you can sometimes, the line can settle so badly because of hydro erosion, you lose the ability to do that. And this is an awkward front yard to be messing with. It's not one you want to be dealing with. It's a deep sewer line. It runs at a hard angle. You potentially have retaining walls and whatnot to deal with, but it's just very deep. So it's one of those ways that you can potentially get ahead of things, save some money, and avoid a really awkward trench being dug in your front yard. So again, that's looking down the road a ways. We're looking into the future on that. As we sit here today, we have great flow all the way to the street and the main lateral for that matter. All the pipe we scoped here today on property is in good condition, or in good condition for its age, i.e. the cast iron. Absolutely spotless clean sewer line. Sewer line is functioning properly at this time. And what keeps your line that clean and spiffy, that is the sign of a household that is going out of their way not to put cooking oil and grease down the line. It is the #1 thing that gunks your pipe up, causes more blockages than almost anything you can do to your sewer line, and it too actually prematurely wears cast iron out. So it's a very good thing to keep up with. Wipe your pans out, pour the grease into a jar, just some kind of mitigation process to keep grease out of the line. Grease and cast iron is more detrimental. In plastic pipe, it doesn't do anything other than gunk the pipe up. In cast iron, what happens, because cast iron is chemically unstable, at one point in time, eons ago, there was a black coating inside that pipe that protected the metal. It wears out. I mean, that wore out probably 30 plus years ago, which exposes the metal to water. And anyway, when you get grease buildup in your line, it traps stuff underneath it, especially acids, which can eat the pipe. It's slow but sure, but it accelerates that process. So you want to keep doing things like these folks are. Just keep the cooking oil and grease out of the line. Anyhow, fabulous looking sewer line. Both new and old pipe there, looks good.